before we start? Because we need to do the security check like very, very well. Yes? No? Okay, so we're going to do it together. The security check is simple. When I say security check, what I want you to do for me is, we're going to do get up and do. Right? Very, very simple. So let's do a dry run. So we're going to do a dry run. So because we're changing attitudes, we're focusing on that. We need to kind of get with the program. Are you ready? Are you ready? Yeah. Alright, so let's go. Security check. One more time. Are you ready? Yeah, I just want to have a or a bit tired, but one more time. You ready? Alright, let's go. 1, 2, 3. Security check. Alright, thank you very much. I see some of the police officers seem to be a bit tired. Their lunch was too much or not enough, whichever one it is. So the task of Group 4 was actually, as Laura said, to look at changing attitudes in relation to stigma, victim blaming, the rape culture, lack of awareness, lack of empathy. So, in response to question 1 and looking at in terms of the frontline workers, changing attitude. Definitely we knew that there needs to be a change in attitude. The first thing we focused on was the fact that the frontline workers in itself, we need to create that awareness of understanding what the other agency goes through. Because have you ever walked into VPT, or you walk into CID, or you walk into VH, and then as soon as you reach there, you just want to slap the news or slap the police officer because the way they received you. You understand? But sometimes we don't understand what they've been going through. So what we hope, one of the first things actually to sort of have that mentorship program where somehow we send one person from another department to experience what the other agency has been going through. So whether it be a collaboration, we've done it with United and Strong and the Ministry of Health, Bureau of Health Education, where we send one of our colleagues within the Ministry of Health to experience what some LGBT person may go through or what the ministry has to deal with. And sometimes understanding that, we can better know how to deal with the organization. So that's the first thing we think should happen. The second thing is in terms of ensuring that there are written policies which sort of mandate inter and intra-agency collaborations. I think too often nothing is written. But we had that experience, sometimes like pulling teeth actually getting an MOU signed. Why? Because you have to go through the chief medical officer and the PSS to look at that MOU, but we believe it's necessary to at least have a mandatory agreement where you can have that inter and intra-agency collaboration. We believe that it's going to make us understand a lot better what goes on in these organizations. Thirdly, one of the things we were asking earlier on, the issue of gender equity. And I asked a question, and I think Laura went to ask the question, what are the percentage of the gender balance within VPT? Male, female, masculine, feminine, what is that gender difference there? Although we have this culture that because predominantly women are the ones reporting rapes and itself, and very little, because do we find that the police officers are actually selected based on the gender to work in VPT? Or because of the fact that women are the ones reporting rape, so we want more women to be the face? We can remember a time when you had more male officers than female officers. Now it's either more females, now it's more or less balanced. And we need to start that change. So ensuring that at least within those sectors that represent that gender difference, we try to create that balance. It ensures that, again, that if we don't start that change, then the change in terms of reports coming from the other gender or the other genders would not change. So we need to start in terms of who people see at first. It's not always about seeing a female. It's sometimes that is who is there gives you that better representation in itself. So that's in terms of question 1. Question 2, the types of training we thought which would be required. And you've mentioned a number of them. One of the critical things, and most of the groups mentioned, is the issue of customer service. Lord have mercy, we know that. Sometimes a nurse has been working 12, 13 hours, the police officers, you've been on the streets all day, you come into CID and somebody walking there with an issue, and you've seen that person countless times for a couple months. You do get frustrated. However, the way you treat people makes them want to come back the next day, or make them want to ensure that, okay, the service is working. So customer service is critical, especially with the frontline workers, how they receive the victim. It doesn't matter whether the issue is real or not, it's perceived or not, but how you receive the victim from that point becomes critical in terms of whether they continue or they trust in the process. Point 2, organizational awareness. A lot of times we don't know what the child is doing. We don't understand your protocols. We don't know your protocols. So having that cross-inter-agency training, so we understand each other's organizational awareness, we know what's going on, we understand your protocol, makes it a lot easier for us to work together. And obviously, point 3, proper documentations of cases being reported. Some of the agencies, it's not a thing for us. Maybe with the police, maybe with the health, it is a big thing. But within the NGOs, sometimes that's not. I mean, because we're so passionate about working with our clients, we forget about documenting and writing reports on those things. Because all we need to do is just, we don't worry about numbers. But we need to start learning to proper document cases that come before us, especially as NGOs in itself. Point 4, training sensitivity, whether it be in LGBT issues, whether it be in understanding sexual violence and understanding the rape and what rape is about, and overcoming those sexual taboos that we have. So sometimes when you say vagina, everybody starts to laugh. Like, really, or when you say cock-a-lock, or when you say cock, or when you say penis. So make people understand and be more comfortable with words and sexuality. So we believe that this issue of training sensitivity, be it sexuality, be it rape, whatever the case is, we need to start understanding these things. Understanding human rights violations. Sometimes people don't know what has happened to them. And so when they come before you, they expect you to be able to tell them. And sometimes you don't know yourselves. Again, the way we work with people, then if we know what they've gone through, if we do a needs test, we can better be able to register that and have capture what they've been going through. So we certainly believe understanding human rights violations and really and truly how to document human rights violations. Managerial training. I think too often we see the frontline workers. Yeah? And also people, we don't train our workers in terms of how to manage the tasks properly, because you have the officer trying to do this, you have the nurse trying to do that. After she has to deal with you in the front, she has to go in the back and do certain things. So helping our frontline workers understand how to manage the tasks properly, and also involving the managers in sessions like these. Persons need to be aware of protocols and the laws. So we focus on a Know Your Rights campaign in terms of the laws that currently exist. I know earlier we were speaking about, are there laws in terms of breach of confidentiality in Sudderth? Yes, there are laws. But how many of us know which part of the criminal code those laws exist? Within the labor code in Sudderth, there are certain laws for in terms of firing or whatever, what circumstances you can't fire somebody based on their sexual orientation or things like that. There are laws, but do we know them? So having sort of like a Know Your Rights session protocol makes people to be able to at least start changing their attitudes because they understand what's happening. Media relations, I think Jerry touched on that one. Understanding as organizations ourselves, how do you actually give an interview? What do you say, what you don't say, and how to do it? And it's, I was speaking to the police officers earlier on, and seriously, entire government ministries, when it comes to PR and marketing, it only happens during elections with our ministers. Apart from that, and not that the ministries don't have very good equipment, they do. It's just that we don't invest in PR and marketing as government ministries or sometimes even as NGOs. We think it's something you cut the budget very easily on, but it's just as critical. Emotional intelligence was one I think that Laura spoke about in terms of understanding, again, what the client go through. Sometimes we as the frontline workers, we also get more emotional than the client, because especially NGOs, because you have a rape case and you know you want justice and you're more hyper than the client themselves. And it sort of affects even the way that you serve the client. And so we want to be able to understand how we become empathetic and how we deal with the client while remaining composed. And the final question, ways to share information. I know we've touched a bit on that. and the young lady just spoke about it from Brazil for the lady before, implementing a digital network of sharing information. Currently in St. Lucia, we are establishing the HMIS, which is the Health Management Information System. I know there are lots of back and forth about this thing. I was speaking to the police officers, and there is a crime management system across the country in itself. When we start talking about sexual violence and sexual cases, we need to understand that within that also the issue of confidentiality and ensuring that various levels of persons have various access within that. Sort of modeling what's currently being done with HMIS in St. Lucia, but ensuring that we know how to share it. And even the implications for regional sharing of those things. We need to stop thinking as small islands and understand how we're moving within the OECS region, and more information has to go across the region. Because people move a lot. We have a perpetrator that moves across the island, and can you share that information with another agency within the island itself. One thing that is critical to us is the establishment of security plans. Information is very critical. However, how we store and manage that information is also just as important. And one of the questions we had was, for example, the shelter for women. When you have a client, you may have to be taken to court, and it said, what is the security plan for that client moving from the home to the courthouse? And it said, I'm just using as an example. You know, for example, if you have a client who's come to one of your organizations in itself, and the perpetrator may not have been arrested yet, is there a security plan? Do we train? We need to start training our organization in developing security plans for themselves as frontline workers, because victim advocates themselves become victims. I mean, many a times there are people that call me on the radio station they see me on the bus, they want to shoot me in my head, they want to cut my throat. I mean, I'm faced daily with things like that. Even my daughter, who's 13-year-old, people will tell her things about her father, and so we have a conversation about those things people tell her. But the fact is that we cannot, while we're busy working with the victim, we ourselves are placing themselves in those positions. And so we believe security plans within our organization is very critical, and also how we store information. The protocols about that. Do we have our cell phones? Are these cell phones? Are we storing personal information about our clients on our cell phones? And it's on our laptops, those sort of things. Maybe the police may have their own structures in it, but sometimes NGOs become so caught up in doing the work that we actually put our clients at risk. And it's we've had situations where our office has been burnt, burglarized, hard drives stolen, all sorts of things. And so we've invested a lot in terms of security for our staff members, security for our clients, and so we certainly believe that external storage of your information in itself, how that is done, ensuring that if you have your laptop, the information is not stored on your personal laptop, ensuring passwords where you can actually store things on the web, and also what are some of the best websites to use for security safety. I know we all love Google, but Google is really actually not the best search engine when it comes to security issues within those things. So again, we need to look at all those things because we want to ensure that, one, people start trusting us, and when they come to the service that they want to access the service, their attitudes change because they start to understand how it works, and they're becoming more positive towards us as organizations in itself. Because we're proving that when you walk into United and Strong, or when you walk into Raise Your Voices, or when you walk into Laura's program, that first of all, your experience is one that you want to share with another person who didn't need to access. And finally, I think it came up that sometimes victims are the ones who actually give out confidential information. So we need to start ensuring that when we meet our victims, we start instilling in them that issue about not sharing information. Because sometimes they have their makume, they will tell the makume. But the makume have another makume. And so that information, we believe is the police officer who did it, or the nurse who did it, when sometimes the victim themselves have divulged that information, and so the attitude changes towards the police officers or to the nurses, when really and truly has to start with you sometimes as the victim and itself. So we believe with those few recommendations, we hope that we have at least shed some way of changing attitudes towards dealing with such cases. Thank you very much.
Questions, comments, complaints?
Yeah. Home tight. Thank you very much.
All right, the last group was tasked, this is number 6.